Right. I first would like to say that adaptive management is about a good plan, right? To planning for adaptivity and to plan for things to happen that so the plan won't be carried out exactly as you wish to, right? So it's not about changing the goals throughout the project period. It's not about quick fixes. It's about having an intentional approach, right? I will come to that later too. So a little bit about SMC at first. So this is how the funds are provided from the Swedish taxpayers to the organizations in partner countries. So you can see here it is a flow, right? The funds from taxpayers to SIDA, which is a Swedish government organization, to us, SMC, as a strategic partner organization, to SIDA, then to our Swedish member organizations. There are, for example, Children's Mission, which are hosting the Kenya for Resilience network now. But also to other member organizations that you are familiar with, PMU, ERICS, LM International, and a few more. And then from the member organization, it comes to partner organizations where most of you are working, and then to community-based groups or other kinds of networks or groups in the communities and through them to the right holders, right? So then you see the flow of the funding in a picture like this. But I would like to see it more as a network too. Here it looks very much like a chain. It comes from from left to right here, but sometimes it's also understood as it comes from above to and trickle down, you know, to the right holders in partner countries. But I see it more as a network, that we are all different nodes in this system. So the flow between the nodes need to work well, and also if you add other kinds of resources, not only money, but also information, capacity in different ways, knowledge, experiences, and it also relates to a theory that I will present later on about adaptive management, or about how to build a healthy network or a healthy system in your organization and in the networks that you are participating in. Right, so like this, we are a network. It's a flow of information, knowledge, and relationships between different parts. So you can see here just a illustration of it. So SMC is a one node, Kenya for Resilience is another, Children's Mission is a third. And here are the member organizations that are included in our platform, or our umbrella organization. We are 29 for the moment, and we are providing funds to about 20 of them. And they, in turn, are supporting partner organizations in 50 different countries around the world. And I think that the funding goes to about 150 different partner organizations. So it is really a big network, but still we feel that that it is a family. It's a small network in some senses too. And just briefly say something about how SMC is working with adaptive management. I wouldn't say that we have a clear strategy on this. It's not really clearly included in policy documents or so, or the strategic plan that we have. But we have a lot of things in place that are really contributing to helping us in this management of changes or crises or things that always happen that we need to adjust the plan we have. So for example, we are working quite a lot with risk assessments on the organizational level. I'm talking now, the secretariat of SMC. And in this risk assessment, we identify risks, how to avoid, mitigate, or manage them. So I think it's important when you are identifying risks, that's not only talking about how to avoid the risk, but also how to manage it when it happens, when it occurs. We have quite strict document on internal governance and control. It's important that it's known to everyone who is responsible for what, and that it's clear what are our commitments in the work we do, the guidings in policies and action plans, and clear responsibilities and duties then for all employees. And it's especially important, of course, for managers and people in leadership positions, but it should be clear for everyone too. It should be known who to report to, what is my responsibility as an employee. After actions review, that's what we call an internal evaluation when we have had a longer process or a project. So we evaluate it internally. We look at how the process went, what can we learn from the changes we had to make. How did we adjust to different things that occurred? So I believe that the learning approach is also a very important part of the adaptive management idea. I also want to say something about the collaboration between employer and staff members, because one thing that is often very prevalent in risk assessment that I assess and that I do myself is the staff turnover, right? Or different things happening in the organization that we can't really do anything about. So the collaboration between employer and staff members at SMC, it's very formalized too. We have continuous meetings where we talk about changes in the organization, the working environment, quite clear agendas on every meeting. So it's the managers and the leadership believes it's an important part of understanding the context we are in, to also really listen to the employees, sorry, the staff members. And I really believe it is an important part of the adaptive management too. I don't think that we don't talk about it like that, but I can see now when I also read about adaptive management and so on, that this is a really important part. So I wanted to say something about that. And also we have the dialogue, of course, with partners and donors to see what kind of flexibility is possible here in this change. Where are the frames for it? What can we do? What can we not do? What does the guidelines say or the policy say? So that is important too. It's just very brief. I'm sure we do a lot of more things, and so do you. So in your organizations, so this is not a recipe on how to make the best adaptive management, but it is just a few points that I wanted to share with you. So this was a definition of adaptive management that I found on USAID's website. can just read it shortly. I think it's a good definition, and I want to focus on a few things of what it says. So it's an intentional approach. It's not something that it's not a quick fix. It's not something you need to do when the plans don't go the way you want to. It's an intentional approach. It's about making decisions. It's about making adjustments in response to new information and changes in the context. So it should be information and information that wasn't known to us when we started the process or the project that we wanted to carry out. And USAID also says on the same website in relation to this definition, like other donors and development organizations, USAID is increasingly recognizing the importance of adaptability for its work to be effective. And I will come back to that, the effectiveness or efficiency in an organization. So I just wanted to say something about that is that is one big reason for why adaptive management is important, right? It's for the work to be effective. And if we just stay on the intentional approach for a second, it needs to be intentional, which means that we need to integrate the approach when planning our operations or activities, or maybe even better, before we start planning, to really see it as a part of the organizational culture, really from the beginning, that it will always be there as an important part for the work to be effective, and to be able to adjust to changes quicker than if the culture wasn't there, that we need to take it moment by moment. So it could be a part of policies, routines, strategic plans, annual plans, program plans, like all plans that you really carry out in the organization. I'm sorry, I have a few chat messages. Paris, do you know, are you looking at the chat? Is it for me, or should I just carry on?
I think
you can just carry on, Julia. They're just people introducing themselves.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. So a short exercise. I thought it would be an individual reflection. So as I said, I'm not an expert on adaptive management. I know my own organization quite well, so I know how we work with adaptive management. And I guess the same is for you, right? You know your organization a lot better than any kind of expert from outside would do. So just a few minutes individual reflection. Please write down everything that comes to mind in how your organization work with adaptive management. And please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat too. So a few minutes, we come back.
Okay, I think we've lost Julia. So maybe before she comes back, we can just do the activity that she has on the screen, the exercise. Just answer the questions and you can share your responses in the chat probably. Oh, she's back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I turned off the video just to mark that the exercise is individual. So just take a few minutes, write down either in your notebook or in the chat how your organization work with adaptive management. So it's just a individual reflection. I will continue in a few minutes.
Thank you. I am seeing some responses coming in. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Solomon, Helen. You're welcome. So Anne is saying that in their organization, they empower women to be cognitive of the changes, that is economic, environmental, and political, that affect us directly, especially climate changes, the little things at household level that can make a difference. And maybe you can share the organization this is coming from. Solomon from CMA says that we apply adaptive management in budgeting for projects. Okay, thank you for that, Solomon. Anyone else? Feel free to share how you apply adaptive management in your organization.
All right, thank you so much for that, for the sharings in the chat. We can come back to the comments in the chat later on. And you were free to choose if you wanted to just make it an individual note or share it in the chat. So don't feel obliged to share it in the chat if you don't want to. But thank you very much. We can carry on a bit. So I guess when we are making plans, we are all familiar with this kind of scenario, right? That it is a clear difference between the plan and the reality. Few things go exactly as we planned, and the question here is then, how do we build in the intentional approach of making decisions and adjustments in response to new information and changes in context? It is, as I said earlier, that it is a way to adapt to the changes a lot quicker than if we need to sit down and do that kind of adaptivity moment by moment. And I would also say that it is something about the organizational resilience. It's and resilience in the planning, right? So it's about being able to respond in a good way, in a long-term way that will help us on the way to reach the goal. So what is resilience in this case then? I'd say it's about finding diversity and alternatives in the way you plan. so that you have alternatives when there is a problem, an obstacle, you have different alternatives on how to manage that or get through it. It could be very effective to, for example, put all eggs in the same basket, or to have just one way to do things, because you have understood that is the most effective way. But if something stops that path, then, or the basket is dropped and all the eggs are lost, then the project itself has failed, right? So it's important to build in resilience in the planning too. And that could be, of course, made in many different ways. So a picture something like this. How to overcome the obstacles instead of losing everything when an obstacle appears. It should be a part of the risk assessments. So if you are making a strategic plan, make sure you also have a risk assessment related to that. So it's quicker to adjust to changes. I know many of you are doing this in applications and project plans, for example, but not maybe that much when it comes to implementing different policies or strategic plans or more organizational annual plans. We are trying to at SMC. We want to do that, and we have risk assessments, but it's also time consuming, of course, to follow them up and to really see that we are adjusting the way we thought about in the beginning. And the risk assessments also needs to be updated, of course. They can be outdated quite early when a crisis or change happens that we didn't predict, for example. Then we have to add that. But I think it's a time worth the energy and resources to make the risk assessments really like a habit, something that is updated frequently and also related to many different kinds of policies and plans. So the theory that I want to say something about is a theory developed by Ulanovic, a researcher, and his colleagues in 2009 and maybe before. They looked at optimal network health and were inspired from the ecosystems. How has nature developed its ecosystems, its networks, because it has been developed and refined in millions, billions of years. So they have really found a structure then in the system, in the network, that is both effective and resilient, right? And how can we then apply that kind of system in our organizations and in the programs that we are developing in the sector here? The theory can be applicable really to all kinds of systems. It can be about markets, economic systems, society at large. It could also be individual, the system that you as a person is involved in, or how your body works, for example. It's kind of the same there. So what can we learn from nature then when it comes to adaptivity, efficiency, and resilience? And when I think about it in the theory and these ecosystems that have been developed through so many years, it's also alarming to think about that parts of the ecosystems are failing now in the biodiversity loss. But I also think that the answer is a part of the theory, So that you can find the solutions when also looking at this balance then between efficiency and resilience. So I want you to think about your organization as a network. It's a network of staff members, policies, all different kinds of systems, external actors, all connected to one another through flows of information and knowledge, time and money. So all are parts of a different the network and nodes. So think about it as a flow, for example, flow in the organization. So in the theory, they are talking about the window of vitality. They suggest that an optimal network health relies on the balance between efficiency and resilience. And we want vital organizations. So how do we find this balance then between efficiency and resilience? We can't make an organization that only focus on efficiency, because then we are very vulnerable to crises and changes. But we can't either make an organization that is only focusing on the resilience part, to always plan for risks and alternatives, because then the organization will not have that motivation. Maybe it won't make any results. We won't achieve anything that we want to. So we need to find that balance then between the efficiency and the resilience. We can think of it as a pipeline, for example. It's very efficient for the water if it's a large pipeline to flow. But if something is blocking that pipeline, where will the water go? It will break surely, and the water will be everywhere. So it won't come to the goal, the target. In that case, the system will fail. But if the pipeline has some different kinds of small pipelines in it too, maybe the system then will be more efficient in long term, and the water will reach us on time. So a little bit about organizational efficiency. We can talk about it as the ability to accomplish tasks which with the least amount of wasted time, money and effort while maintaining work quality. Of course, we don't want to waste any time or money or effort, but we still want to maintain the quality of the work we are doing. So that is one definition of organizational efficiency. Can you say something about how it works in your organization then? What makes your organization efficient? Or how can it be more efficient? Do you have any suggestions? Please write them down in your notebook or in the chat. A few minutes exercise. And you can think about it in terms of having a good flow, for example.
Um,
So, yes.
Thank you, Purity. Adapting work from home model. I can see David Omondi having structures, oversight by board, and CMMX as accountable and efficient. Thank you, David. Thank you, Nathalie. Less silos would make it easier to adapt to the realities. Use more of the models and tools we share with partners, and capacity strengthening of others should be used more internally. Thank you so much for the comments on the chat box. Anne is saying, by using community-led models, strong structures where everyone is accountable. Thank you, Anne. I think these are very good insights. We appreciate your comments and active participation.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's move on. We have a few minutes left, but so soon we will have a questions and answer session.
Solomon, thank you. Flexibility of policies in place. Back to you, Julia.
Great, thanks. So, organizational resilience, what is that then? I took this definition from a research article by David Denyer at Cranfield University. So he's a professor who has summarized a lot of research about organizational resilience. And he uses then this definition: the ability of an organization to anticipate, prepare for, respond, and adapt to incremental change and sudden disruptions in order to survive and prosper. So what I think is interesting here is really what says in the end. We need to apply organizational resilience in order to survive and prosper as an organization, but really to survive, like it's really that important. It's that important for ecosystems. It's that important for organizations and all kinds of networks and systems that we have. I think that a large part of our work days goes to making the organization more efficient, to really achieve the results as soon as possible, and don't waste any time or money or anything. But we also need to focus on the resilience in order to be really long-term and able to survive and prosper. So I think it's important to have in mind, and yeah. So the last exercise then, please take a few minutes to just think about, how is your organization resilient? Or how can it be more resilient? And think of it then in terms of alternatives and diversity. We have a comment in the chat.
Thank you. I'm seeing the comments have started flowing in.
Yes. We can continue. I just want to come back to the intentional approach, to the definition about adaptive management, and hope that you can see the link then between the definition of adaptive management and to really
I
find.
can see Lillian posted that we apply adaptive in our organization. We keep on reflecting on the implementation of the project and make changes where strategies are not working. James Bundi COA works on adaptive management on areas of implementation and projects. As IAS Kenya, we adapt to unique and different community needs during project designs. Thank you so much for that insight. Adapting communities, being aware of their challenges. This is from Anne. Thank you so much. Being aware of their challenges, they have indigenous solutions to the challenges as they adapt to the new technologies. Thank you so much. Mike is saying leveraging on the expertise of persons in the organization in local fundraising, being able to mobilize resources, support for our courses. Thank you so much. Nathalie is saying learning organizations where it is safe to fail, commit errors, and ask questions is more resilient. Thank you, Nathalie. Thank you so much. As the comments still come in, Bernard, exploring alternative resources, mobilization strategies. Thank you, Bernard. I think back to you, Nathalie. Back to you, Julia, sorry.
No worries. Yes, so it's just a brief exercise on how it works in your organization, but I hope that you can see the link between adaptive management then, and to find this window of vitality, the perfect balance or the optimal balance between organizational efficiency and resilience. And I always find it very interesting to do these kinds of presentations because it's so difficult to to really plan how much time it will take. So now I need to be adaptive too in the presentation, right? So my time has run out, and we will not have time for the last exercise, which I thought would be to really combine the two different parts then, the organizational efficiency and organizational resilience. But I'm very glad to be able to join the rest of the seminar too. So I will learn a lot more about adaptive management myself. Right, thank you very much. And we will have a few, if anyone has any questions or comments on my presentation here or what I've said, please go ahead.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much for that. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and she can answer them. Or comments as well.
I think it's also very interesting just to see that I guess that all organizations really work with adaptability and adaptive management in one way or another, but we maybe not think of it in those terms. So it's very nice to see all the comments that you shared in the chat, how you are working with it. I hope it has spurred some new ideas also on how to really think about it, adaptation and and how to apply apply an intentional approach then to the changes that occurs always. So we will reach the outcomes even though it wasn't the way we first planned.
Yes, and it's really interesting on how you just managed to link the adaptive management with risk assessment. And basically you're looking at it and you see that adaptive management starts from the planning concept. You have to include and have it as a concept from the start of your planning. And basically you're looking at setting the objectives, engaging all stakeholders, the decisions and the alternatives that you're having. And specifically, even when you set these objectives, there are always trade-offs that you have to do. And when these trade-offs come in, then that means that adaptive management sets in so that you can see what can you trade off and what can you be able to just make things work. So measuring the risk tolerance for potential consequences in decision making, I think this is really coming out, and I believe now it is clear that adaptive management is something whenever someone is planning for a project or implementing an activity or has something in future to do, then adaptive management should be at the conception of the project. Thank you so much, Julia.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for that summary.
Chat box. I believe it's either you are a very good teacher or speaker. That means
I think so.
or people are still thinking of what kind of questions to just post in. So because of time, we just wanted to really keep time. We would go to the next speaker. I believe if anyone has any question, they can still be able to post it in the chat box. Julia will still be with us until the end of the session, so she will be able to respond to some of these questions. Thank you so much, Julia.
Yeah, thank you.
Please stick around so that you can be able to answer some of these questions. Thank you.
Yes, I will. Thank you. And thank you very much for that summary.
We are transitioning. Thank you so much, participants, for still being with us. We are transitioning to the next speaker. We are giving ourselves a 2-minute break as we transition to our next speaker.
Hello.
Thank you, Nathalie. Could you please stop sharing so that you can just put a little a profile of you, and then we'll be able to share. Thank you.
Okay, so we have our next speaker, Nathalie Blom. I'm sorry if I have mispronounced. I'm hoping that you will teach us how to pronounce your name properly first. Nathalie is a program officer in Church of Sweden. She holds a BA in Global Studies and is currently studying a Master in Crisis Management. She has studied both gender studies and norm creativity, and since 2019 holds a certification as a norm engineer. She has more than 10 years of experience teaching and conducting workshops, and in 2017 she joined ACT Church of Sweden, where she has been conducting workshops, training partners, and supporting the overall work with localization. In addition to this, she's a graphic facilitator, helping individuals and groups understand complex words and processes, create common ground, and work toward a set goal by visualizing what is said and what is not. You're welcome, Nathalie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was really interesting to listen to Julia's session. Some of the things will obviously overlap, but I'm happy that I will share a bit more about, so this was about planning, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we can use an adaptive management and in the methods, in the tools that we use when we work directly. Could you please give me right to share my screen? Thank you. So I hope you can see now. So my name is Nathalie Töpperwien Blom. I work as a resilience advisor at ACT Church of Sweden. I was a program officer before, and since the last year and a half, I work more on a global level, supporting all our programs when it comes to resilience. It comes out of a broader strategic work with localization that we have taken on in our new strategy within ACT Church of Sweden. And within the resilience work, we have a variety of methods. And I am within ACT Church of Sweden, the specialist of one of these methods. And we also connect that to psychosocial support and to other tools and methods that partners are already using. And so I wanted to share this method with you, and I have a similar picture to what Julia have when it comes to looking into a project plan. So what we have done is, because we have this very horizontal line of how we want the project to be, and within the last, well, for me, the last 6 years, but we can see with partners for more than 10 years, planning a project doesn't really work, because none of the things that we plan are able to be implemented or doesn't happen because things in the context change. There are multiple kinds of situations to take into account. So we work in countries where we have socio-political instability, where we have multiple natural disaster occurring on a more and more irregular basis. So a lot of the things that we plan is just kind of a waste of time, because we have to replan again every 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on the occurrence of the situation that happens. And so for everyone, both partners and for us, to do the planning, to assess the planning, for it to just a month later all be gone and redo the planning. So what we are working with is a very flexible methodology when it comes to writing the application. And because we have seen, as you can see in this picture as well, these, you know, there is a hurricane, then we have a drought, then we have a change in the political situation, or there is an increase in violence, which makes even the most simple activities, going back and forth to office or conducting workshops or trainings for the local communities, impossible to execute. And COVID obviously was a unexpected thing as well that happened. And so from this, we've really learned that we need to kind of follow these steps instead. We still have a goal where we want to reach. So we set objectives, impacts, results far away that we want to see. So it's not that we don't look into the future and see, okay, what changes that we want to see, whether that is more girls going to school, whether there is a more resilient community in the communities where we work. Maybe we want to see a change in a policy. Maybe we want to see things happening on a smaller or a bigger level, on a local community, people to people level, or on a bigger, more political level that have impact on more communities than the ones we work in. So we still have this goal, as you can see, the person looking into the vision of the project, whether that is 6 months, a year, or 5 years, which is the longest project period that we have within ACT Church of Sweden at the moment. And so, yeah, this is just to visualize how we try to follow this. And because we don't know when to go down, when to go up, and how to follow, we instead use a method that is itself adaptive. And it's called Survival and Community-Led Response in Crisis, shortened SCLR. And we started it together with a few ACT Alliance members. So ACT Alliance is a organization, a network of religious or church-based organizations all over the world. And together for the last 15 years, we have developed this method or toolbox called Survival Community-Led Response. And it's been used in different contexts, both on the humanitarian and the development side. And we adapt it also when something is not really humanitarian and development, because we have a lot of those situations. Palestine, I think, is a good example where we have this long protracted crisis where people, due to the political situation in the country, do not have access to water, electricity, education, or healthcare the way they should. But it's not a humanitarian disaster per se where we can fundraise and get those things there. So we use this SCLR methodology there, for example. I have worked since 2017 with Haiti, which is a context with multiple complex things happening on a daily or weekly basis, where none of the things we plan today even will happen in 2 weeks. And so using this very flexible adaptive method has been of great importance to actually achieve any results at all, instead of trying to follow through with what we said in January or when we signed the contract. So I wanted to share a little bit about what it is. And if you have interest and any questions, I'm going to share in the chat later on this 2-pager that contains kind of the basis of what the SCLR method contains. But yeah, so this is a visual showing the 6 components of SCLR. And in the center of everything we do within the methodology, we have autonomous collective self-help by people in crisis. So we believe that the people, the communities, the families, the football team, whatever it might be, the people are the core of this entire methodology. So if they are not there, if they don't have the capacity and interest in working together and with themselves to lift themselves out of the situation they're in, this methodology doesn't work. So we only work in settings where people are really eager and interested to learn and to adapt and to do things to kind of improve their own situation. So they are at the center. And then on the upper right side, we have rapid provision of relevant skills and training. So we don't do an assessment of what they lack. Rather, we ask them, what do you need? What skills would you, in this community, in this village, in this organization, what do you need to be able to respond right now if it's an ongoing disaster? Or if we are working on a more long-term thing, how can you as a community respond in a better way? Yeah, maybe we need training on project management, on accountability, on how to make beehives, how to clean the channels to ensure that there's not going to be a flooding. So it can be anything. If they have bought and installed solar panels to ensure they have electricity all year round, independent of hurricanes, then maybe they're asking for training on how to repair those solar panels. So we are really open, and it depends on what the community themselves want. And if we work with the same kind of project in 5 different communities, the skills and trainings they request might still be different, because they have different people living in each community. Some might be teachers, other might be engineers. So filling that gap is what we're looking at. And the second component is proactive connecting and networking. So making sure that the right people meet each other and support, so they can really, hand in hand, ensure that they work together with these people that are engaged and want to see a change. And then if we go to the other yellow one, upper corner, is group microgrants for community well-being. So these are not credits. These are not cash grant for households, the one we might be used to from humanitarian work. These are grants, so we give them, we don't want them back, and they are for groups. So groups that exist or groups that emerge in a disaster. So it can be a group that already exists. Maybe there's the Women on Tuesdays Bible study group. Maybe there is the youth group that meets on Friday. Those groups might already exist, and they can apply for these community cash grants, or it can be an emerging group. It's like the neighbors say, hey, we need to fix the street, or we need to make sure that our kids can come to school, so we want to do this kind of project. So they come together as a group that just started to exist, and they apply for funding within the frame of this methodology. And then the last yellow one is participatory action learning in crisis. And as I wrote on Julia's question, I really believe that when we learn together, we become more resilient. When we create a safe environment where we can fail, where we feel comfortable telling our errors, whether they're big or small, and to learn from them. So not everyone in the organization makes the same error. Science research shows that every organization, every company does the same amount of errors on a statistical level. The result and the end game depends on if everyone does the same mistake or everyone does another mistake on top of the other ones. And that's how you learn, grow, and develop. And so learning while we walk, we don't sit and plan and do and wait. We start immediately when we work with the communities and like, okay, what do you want to do? Just do it. And if it doesn't work, we try it again. So, oh, we want to do this goat project. Okay, let's do it. Oh, wait, it wasn't a good thing because there's not enough water, or the goat eats the neighbor's crops. Okay, then next step, what can we do? Okay, we need to use a barn. We need to do. So throughout the projects, we make sure that they learn and adapt, instead of just sitting and waiting and imagining errors, because then you might imagine errors that doesn't exist and you mitigate for them. But you also might miss the ones that are real, but you didn't think about them because you were not in the context. So we learn in the actual real environment, and that's called participatory action learning in crisis. So the safe to fail environment is important. And we can also see the do no harm aspect here, where we learn how to make less harm. A lot of times we say do no harm. We know that changes do harm, but how can we do less harm? So if we work with the gender empowerment project in a typical masculine community or society, we know it's going to be harmful, because when someone loses power or think they're going to lose power, there's going to be problems. So then we look into how can we make this harm less to certain groups, by maybe involving them, maybe have separate activities for men to talk about these fears, or what is it that can cause this distress. And then on the bottom blue ones, we have support for locally led processes to address root causes of vulnerability. A lot of times when we have projects, we look into the emergent right now consequences and try to handle them. And we need to do that. We need to make sure that we alleviate suffering and make sure that as few people as possible are put in harm's way in a disaster. But we need to do that at the same time as we are responding to, why was there a disaster in the beginning? Why are these people more vulnerable? Why are people living in this physical area or geographical area that poses a danger? And so looking into the root causes of everything that builds up to this disaster or situation of distress. So we try to layer them together. So, okay, you want to solve this problem. How can we do it at the same time while addressing more deeper things? And also when it comes to build back better, and instead of build back the way it was. So we include that in this blue box. And then the last one is a demand-led mechanism for enhanced coordination and collaboration. And here it's both coordination and mechanism on the local level, but we also need to reach the higher level to make sure that stakeholders, governments, politicians are held accountable and coordinate activities as soon as it's possible. We know that the only people that can save themselves in a disaster are people themselves in their own community, because they're there. Firefighters, healthcare workers, aid workers from the capital or from any other part of the world are going to take a day or two or a week to come with the resources and with the right staff. And this needs to be coordinated in a way that they actually fill the gaps. We don't need more blankets in Haiti when there was a earthquake because it was so warm. We needed shelter, we needed rain cover because it was also hurricane season. And so it needs to be this demand-led mechanism to make sure that the people themselves request who can come and what kind of things do we need support with. And then you can connect with the 4 other ones. Is it then the community cash grant? Is it the skills and training? Is it the connection and networking? Or is it the participatory action learning? So these are the 6 components. And as you can see in the circle around, it says changes in institutional roles, relationships, and systems. And this is something that we try to do throughout the project, but also as staff working from a more on a more international organization, that the learnings we get back from the organization on how to adapt and how to be flexible in situations that we can no way anticipate the outcome of or the consequences of. We need to also teach and change the way we work as a Church of Sweden, because our contracts are very rigid. They are stuck on the cost, on the planning for 3 or 5 years, even though we know that in 2 weeks this is going to be irrelevant. We need to teach and train our donors in how it works. People on the ground, they don't care if it's a silo of humanitarian development environment. They care about their daily lives now, and a lot of times these go hand in hand. The climate change adaptation project might result in mitigating a humanitarian disaster. And so we try, with the capacity and knowledge from the partners that we work with, to kind of feed back to the international aid system or humanitarian system and change both our and their perception of how development cooperation should work. Please, if you have any questions regarding the components, you're welcome to write in the chat. Otherwise, I will continue. And one of the activities that we do when we do this training, so the whole method takes about a week to learn. It's a 5-day training that we do on site with the partners. And one of the questions we ask them is, what groups are you part of? So I would like you to write in the chat, what groups are you part of? So it can be anything. I'm part of a dancing team. I am part of my family. That's a group. I am part of my unit for resilience within Church of Sweden. So if you feel comfortable, be aware that everyone can see what you write. So you don't have to write down every possible group you are, but just to get a thought of what groups in this meeting we're actually part of. So please feel free to write in the chat.
Thank you, Lillian. I can see Lillian is part of a monitoring and evaluation network. Thank you. Nathalie, a dance team, resilience network. Julia, part of a book cycle and a trade union. Thank you, Julia.
Yes, I will leave the chat open and feel free to continue.
Anna Wambua, she's part of a research network.
Yes.
Thank you, Anne. Joseph is part of a community social organization. Solomon is part of Charter for Change Research and Advocacy Working Group.
Great. Thank you so much. I will keep the chat open, so please continue.
Thank you, everyone. Please keep the chat box active. Back to you, Nathalie.
Thank you so much. So yeah, this is very interesting. You mentioned so many different groups on higher level, on networking, social groups, a book circle, which is something that happens very close to home. Maybe you meet physically. So all these groups we are part of, they make up some kind of social structure where we have people who know our names, who expect us to be in certain situation, but they also know maybe our competences, capacities, maybe also weaknesses. And these are the groups that makes us have someone to relate to in case something happens. So when we do this training, we talk quite a lot and we write down all the groups we can imagine that we are part of. And if you do it for a little bit longer, you probably come up with a lot more groups and realize how many groups you are part of, and in many different directions. It can be like trade unions, it can be organizations, social things, it can be this friend group, family friend group. Maybe you're in an alumni network from when you studied. So you have all these connections, and they are really, really important for when we want to strengthen the social cohesion in a disaster, because a lot of things breaks when there's a disaster, whether that is an onset in case of a hurricane or an earthquake, but also when there's an increase of violence, when there's conflict, countries on the verge of civil war, or just political instability, when you always change from the right to the left in the political leadership. There's this kind of feeling of unsafety, on not knowing where to belong, who can you trust? And then these groups that you have been part of, some might not continue to exist, but some of these groups might be the only group you're actually part of. And if something then would to be happen, this would be a group where you together with 3, 5, 7 people could be part of this response mechanism with the 6 components that I just showed you. Maybe this book circle or community resilience for peace project group could apply for the funding for its members, for its family members, for the community. Maybe it's the neighborhood watch group that wants to apply for funding to repair the street after something happens, or create a system of surveillance of volunteers. So it can be really anything that the little group that applies for the funding can define as, this is what we need to feel safe, to feel happy. A lot of times it's in disaster, you might get what you need in case of water and food, but this feeling of belonging or usefulness or dignity might be taken away because you really just need food and water. And human beings are so much more than that. And so through this SELR toolbox, we make sure that all aspects of life are taken into account when we respond. And so for me, this what groups are you part of is a really good exercise to start get this thinking of how many groups I'm actually part. And some people are not part of any groups, and then it becomes really difficult because they don't have that system. But then hopefully these groups emerge and we have the same interest or the same goal. Yeah, we want to repair, we want to build, we want to create. So I think that's really, really rich and important to think of. And a lot of times we take all of those groups that we are part of for granted. And especially maybe the ones that we don't see as very formal, maybe my dance group, you're in a choir, maybe you have a group of mothers or fathers who meet because you all have in common to have children. And you maybe not think that these are groups that are actually important on that level because they're not so formal, but they are equally important when it comes to bouncing back as an individual and as a community. And it helps us to continue to be stretchy and flexible. So I would like to end with some examples from Haiti, where we started to work with quite a big approach in 2017 with a new strategy, with a entire new Haiti program, with a lot of really nice results and impacts that we wanted to reach. And so we had this vision, this is where we want to go. And we made all of this together with the local communities. Like, where is it do you see yourself in 5 to 7 years? Yeah, we want to increase this. We want to feel empowered. We want to have access to financial empowerment and sustainability and independence. So we all had this common vision. But then when we started doing the project planning, some bigger, some smaller projects involving the communities, we realized that throughout just the process of writing this application, the context changed so many times that it was just, okay, let's be less specific, let's be less detailed, let's make planning that doesn't involve dates, because we don't know if there's going to be a hurricane and we have to move it 2 months. So we started to make it more and more empty, the application, and it didn't really work. And then we found this SLR approach to be really fitting. So what we did in the application was, for the next 5 years, we will work with SLR as a method. And that was pretty much the application. I mean, there was a bit of a context, a bit of the, the typical application, but the essence was really like, we are going to use this adaptive methodology called SELR, and this is how we are going to train our partners. This is how we're going to fund it, and these are the money that we have. And then there was a short Excel stating the amount of community cash grants or micro grants that were going to be used for every year in every part of the country. And we, as a Church of Sweden, went to our donors, asked if this is okay format, and we got it approved. And so we had this very loose application with the trust between us and the 16 local partners that we had in Haiti, to train them in the beginning of the project period in the method in various rounds, so that everyone could feel comfortable, and then constant coaching. And then little by little, something happened. Okay, there is this landslide. Let's do a project on that. So then we received a smaller version of an application that said, yeah, we have a landslide, these 4 communities, so and so many people are affected. These are the 10 things we want to do, and this is the amount. And then we already had the contract, so we could quickly transfer the funds just based on this short 1-2 pager of application. I mean, it wouldn't be called application or approved as an application in relations to a donor, but we had that relationship built out already before. And then there was a hurricane, and then there was a community in the mountains. They had an ambulance donated a few years ago, but it broke down. So then they applied for funding from us to fix it and to train some staff to actually have first aid training. So we funded that. In another community, they had big issues with children dropping out of school due to not doing their homework and not feeling engaged. So they requested solar panel, electricity poles, and yeah, so throughout the whole 5 years, we got so many smaller applications. Some of them were preventive or mitigative regarding the next hurricane or landslide. In some situations, it was like, we need an increased leadership, youth leadership regarding gender equality at the border, because there's a lot of conflict there. There's an increase in gender-based violence. Can we do this youth training on leadership for so and so many people? We need this much money. We need a place to be, and we need some facilitators that we need to pay a daily fee for. And so we have these, I don't know how many small version application we received throughout that, but they were quick and they were needs-based, and they addressed the root causes of certain problems while addressing the immediate needs of a smaller group or of a bigger community. And all through the processes, the members of the community were involved. They were asked what is the greatest need. They had to prioritize together, and depending on how much money they had, they could then take the first 3 priorities or the first 5, and then the community agreed on that. So there was no conflict on that level where people say, hey, why didn't my project get chosen? Because they choose the projects together based on urgency, based on needs, based on people's vulnerability. And whenever we had more funding, we could just go down the priority list and say, okay, we have a little bit more funding, you can take priority 5 and 6 as well. And that way people really got engaged, and people who didn't get their projects chosen, they tagged along in other projects, like, oh, you are 8 people digging these ditches to prevent the next flooding. Can I be part of it because my project was not chosen? And we could see how the community worked more and more together. And when the money ran out, people started pitching in themselves. Oh, we should buy more tools. We should make sure that there is enough water and hygiene projects in the store. Maybe we can, lend money. And then when something happens, we actually get the projects. But we have them in the community. So there's a lot of different learnings. And the reason why we choose this method was because the situation changes. We were unable to travel from Sweden because this is the second we got green light, the situation in Haiti is fine, you can travel. We started planning, and then it takes a few weeks. And then when we were ready to travel, something happened again, a kidnapping or the government shut down, or there was a new raid between the different violent groups, so it was cancelled. And this back and forth was not working. And in the end, the local communities were kind of on their own. And so we just started to work with the method where they didn't even need us to be there, but they could handle both the design, the need, the application itself, and the complete implementation and result management in the end of a project. And so we trained this 2017, 2018, 2019, and it worked better and better. We scaled up our funding. And then in 2020, COVID came, and most of our projects all over the world were frozen or put on hold or reshaped, redone, or lowered because they couldn't do the trainings they thought they couldn't implement because no one was there. Here we had worked directly with the communities themselves. So there was no, obviously the monitoring trips and things like that were canceled, but the whole essence of the project just continued the way it did before. Some of the things changed, and because we didn't have such a rigid application, they could just say, okay, let's do a project that empowers women and protects them from COVID as well, and learn or teach how to self-protection, hygiene, social distancing, and so on. So they implemented that throughout their projects because they could just update anything because we already had the agreement from 2017. And yeah, and when we evaluated the different things that we did, we had very, very good results. And when we compare to other countries where we are more present and where we really work with planning and trying to just adapt, similar to what Julia said, adapt in the planning process, we noticed that COVID, on top of the hurricanes and the earthquakes and the political instability, was just too much to handle in Haiti. So we were really happy that it worked. And in 2022, we did a huge evaluation on this particular method in Haiti, and it showed great results. The interviews with the rights holders were nothing compared to previous evaluation in Haiti or in other contexts where we work with a different methodology. And I would like to end by just shortly, when we ourselves wanted to manage, monitor and collect or harvest the results, we used outcome harvesting as a method. I don't know if you know about it, if you know what it's about, but it's also a methodology on on how to harvest results, and it's adaptive. So it's not that you have a result written and then you check it off, because if you do a million things but you don't reach the result that you said 5 years ago you do, it looks like your project was not successful. And we noticed that year after year that our projects were not having the impact we wanted, but they had another 100 impacts that we couldn't measure because we hadn't written them down. So we stopped planning for results and instead used outcome harvesting, which means pretty much same as the picture I showed in the beginning, where you kind of follow the things that happen. So throughout the journey, whether that is once a week, once a month, every 3 months, that's decided between us and the partner. And sometimes the partner likes the methodology and does it a lot. And sometimes we just follow the yearly cycles. But so what we do is we talk about different things that happened. And within outcome harvesting, you follow the logic of these three things. So you look into what control did you have over a situation. Well, we funded this much, and that resulted in 5 trainings. So that's kind of the old way of, checking activities. So that we need to see, what did we actually do? We did train these people. We did give out these seeds, which resulted in plants. So that's still there. But the second step, the second level, is called influence. So what influence did we have over things by doing this? Oh, by giving these women these seeds or these goats, we influenced a change in leadership, because women with a goat can access leadership position. We influenced independence among women who can divorce or have their own financial income and therefore send their children to school. So we can see this level of influence that the project and activities that we did had. And then the last one is then called concern. So this can be both where we verify with other, and then maybe this resulted in other communities starting to give goats to women. So this is way out of our proportion. That's the white circle you can see. We have nothing to do with this, but it happened. Maybe, I mean, we can't be 100% sure because of what we did, but maybe some kind of concern around what we did. So what we could see, and if you can go back to the control part, was we did the SELR methodology in these 16 organizations. We influenced a lot of changes in the society, more children staying in school, women feeling safer because they felt more empowered because there was a structure. We can see all of these kinds of influence that had kind of a direct correlation to the project we implemented. But the concern part is things that we didn't. So we saw other organizations that did not cooperate with us, that were not part of our network. They started to come to the trainings that our partners had on SELR when they wanted to multiply. They started to apply for funding for donors that we have nothing to do with and started to work with this very adaptive resilience method. And I could go on and just talk about these 3 different spheres and how we saw the results and impacts. And for the first time, Haiti program delivered page after page after page of impact compared to 2016, when this one thing that we had in the Excel sheet of the logical framework was not met. And all the other things we cannot harvest because they were not in our plan. So we use these 2 interchangeably. The one is the methodology throughout, and the other one is more about the results that we harvest. And yeah, so this could be an outcome harvesting session where we sit together, we talk, and what happened in this community. And when we do that, people say out loud, oh, but this resulted in that. And then someone else says, oh, and that resulted in this. And then people kind of jack into each other things. And when they say it out loud, it becomes also a proudness. Oh, we did all of this by just, giving these people these goats or ensuring these electricity poles, solar paneled electricity poles. And they really became proud. They owned the process because they had made the idea, they had designed the application, they had implemented and followed up. And when you're in that, you become kind of blind to what you do. But when we were sitting here listening to everyone's opinion on what was the impact, it's like, oh, this was actually really an impactful project. One of my favorite impacts or stories was we try to use an inclusive language in trainings when it comes to French and Spanish to make sure, because the language itself is very masculine. Everything is ending on O, means that we include men. And so we trained people who then train their communities on how to use this inclusive language. And when we did the outcome harvesting session, we asked people like, so what was the benefit of this? What was the results? And yeah, I started to use a more inclusive language. People felt more comfortable or happier. But then there was one girl, a young girl, she said, yeah, my mom started using inclusive language and now I do it. And then I started using inclusive language in the school. And then my teacher asked me why I use an inclusive language. So this is far out of what we had planned, but then the teacher started to investigate and look into what an inclusive language was. And who knows, maybe in a few years, the school will change the way they talk or use an inclusive language. And so, yeah, we could really see and measure, and it was all because we had these bigger conversation, harvesting all the fruits of everything they themselves had done. And with that, I say thank you and open up for questions, comments. Please write in the chat or raise your hand if there's anything you wonder. I'm happy to share any links or documentation in the chat if you're interested.
Thank you so much, Nathalie. I think we have really learned a lot, especially from this model. And looking at it, if I may just summarize, we're looking at a model that is community-centered. And once it is community-centered, then that means the impact that we have in the community and the feedbacks that we get from our M&E systems, basically from the M&E systems, needs to be very informative and the assessments need to be done, and if we can use the outcome harvesting also, I think we maybe just put together the adaptive management model, successful models, and the outcome harvesting. I think we, as organizations, will be able to really get out and get more results of what we are actually doing out there. Because with the models that basically we are using, you find they're very rigid, and you might be having a lot of impact on the ground, but you are not able to capture or report whatever you are doing. Yet it is actually, if you just engage with the community, and also you be able to get these results clearly, you'll realize that the impact is very good and great with the work that we are actually doing. From the chat, I think there are some participants who basically requested for more information. There was someone who was requesting if we can be able to share some of this information so that they can be able to read more, and I think we'll really appreciate that.
I will do
So
that.
it's just we are waiting. If anyone has any concern, clarification, questions, kindly feel free to post on the chat box. We are here to just be able to share and get to share knowledge, exchange whatever. Like, you can actually even share some of your experiences that you have on the ground, what has worked, what has not worked. We can be able to engage here and even be able to support each other in matters knowledge to be able to achieve better results in our projects.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to stay along and listen to the continuation of this
Thank you,
conversation.
Solomon. Solomon is appreciating particularly about the intentional approach in adaptive management. I think from Julia's presentation was an eye-opener. We thank you. Thank you, Nathalie. Nathalie has shared everything on the chat box. Kindly, we can be able to get some of these really important, insightful information on our chat box. There are links there that have been posted, and I think this will really help us in improving our projects.
Thank you so much.
So far, there is no question. I think Nathalie will be with us throughout the remaining sessions. So if there's any question that will pop up before we end the session, then we'll be able to direct it to her. And we really thank you for your time, Nathalie, and for the very informative information. So we would like to proceed to the next speaker so that we can be able to keep our time. Thank you so much, Nathalie.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nathalie. Thank you, Paris. Now, our next speaker is Sam Ogolla, who is a capacity building, research, and evaluation consultant. Sam is a professional development consultant with 20 years of international experience gained over time from working with international organizations in different countries across sub-Saharan Africa. That includes South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Malawi, Sudan, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. His areas of specialization include research, education, and capacity building, environment and disaster risk management, program development and implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and learning processes, and international consultancy services. As a capacity building practitioner, he has conducted a number of trainings in adaptive management, including some for K4R. He holds a bachelor's degree from Kenyatta University, that is in Kenya, and a master's degree from University of the Free State in South Africa. Thank you, Sam. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and
You're
my
muted.
appreciation for being here. Confirm that you can hear me first. I've removed the mute.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, then confirm that you've given me the permission to share my screen.
Yes, you should be able to share your screen.
Thank you very much. Let me start from there. Share screen. Then the last confirmation, confirm then that you have my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you very much. Now, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you very much, Nathalie. Thank you very much, Julia. I followed your presentations, and I'm happy with what we are sharing together as a team, because this is a learning process. They have just given an introduction of myself and what I do. It sounds a lot. It's not even as much as that, but well, when you travel to places and do things, when it is written, it looks like it's a whole pack. Now, I'll skip the introduction. It has been done. I have two disclaimers that I'd like to register up front. I'm visiting my old mom up country. So if you hear any farm sounds, for those who are familiar with them, please bear it with me. The second one is the fact that we did not have power, I think, from around 1 o'clock. It has just come back now, and I hope it will hold. And that means we also did not have internet. Let me hope that both of them hold until I complete this presentation. Being adaptive management, we will find a way. I believe we just have to adapt to it. Right, then I can allow me then to get into this. I have been given this part to present the uncertainties on adaptive management. And in my case, I've walked this path. I've gone through most of this. So quite a bit from experientially, a lot of it also learned along the way. But then deep inside me is a teacher that they cannot remove from me, even if I'm in the development space right now. I trained and worked as a teacher for 15 years. My last day in class was Catholic University of Mozambique. And it has a way of getting inside you. So if you find my approach being more of a teacher-oriented, you'll bear with me, but I believe that this is a learning process. So my first interest is in capturing what I'd like us to learn within this session. And I have 4 of them that I could identify easily. Very many people are uncertain about adaptive management, and I'd like it to come out at the end of this that that's a very normal thing. If you find yourself very uncertain about it, I'd like us to realize that it is the situation in the adaptive management space. We are teachers in adaptive management and we are very uncertain about it. So that is the first objective I'd like us to get by the time we finish this. Then remember that when you're uncertain about something, there's always a reason why. There's something that causes it. I'd like us to pass through what are some of the reasons that bring out the uncertainties. And then at the third stage is when we will identify some of the uncertainties in adaptive management. But then this was not a talk show. We are in a practical resilience space where we need to adapt every day. So the last part I'd like to cover is practical mitigation measures for any of the uncertainties that you develop. And you'll realize that quite a number of them you can do along the way. There is no rule book that has been listed down so that for this uncertainty you do this. There's nothing like that. It's adaptive management, so you keep adapting along the way. Those are the objectives, the 4 objectives I'd like to run with. And I was given 35 minutes for the presentation. I believe that I should finish this within the 35 minutes. The teacher in me tells me to also cover the methodology, because it also tells you where you're going to. But this is largely a learning process and a discussion, even if it is not direct. I'd like to believe that you will post any comments, you will post any points that you have on the board so that we can share them. Right, capturing that. The first thing then I start from is the definition. And Julie, I believe, came up with one that I find very easy to walk around with. The definition on adaptive management that Julia shared. I'd like to walk with that any time of the day because it is easy. And when you talk about adaptive management, then you combine it with the topic that I was given, the uncertainty. So I start from uncertainty and tell me if any of these images resonate with you. Whether you are hesitant about applying a methodology, whether you are unsure about it, you're not very certain whether it will give the results that you want, whether you just have some doubt about it, or do you find it unpredictable? Do you find it a methodology that you are not sure the result that you will get at the end? All those will fit in as some of the things we are going to talk about in terms of understanding the term uncertainty. And we start in education, we start from the known as we head into the unknown. If we start from this as some of the explanations for uncertainty, I believe we start on a platform, a level platform rather. If you are hesitant about a methodology you want to use, or you're unsure about it, or you have some doubt about it, or you find it unpredictable, those are some of the things we want to discuss, identify, and discuss in the course of this engagement. And then the definition by Julia that I talked about, which I believe resonates well with a number of us. The intentional, I think it has just been summarized a few minutes ago. It's an intentional approach. And the fact that decision-making goes hand in hand with adjustments. But I'd like us to realize what was mentioned also earlier, that at the end of the day, your objective remains the same, no matter how much adjustment you do. I came across a very simple definition of adaptive management, learning by doing. I can go with that also. As you learn, you keep on adjusting and you keep on shaping it up to take you towards your objective. Your objective remains the proverbial geographic north. It is a constant direction as you adjust according to what comes up. And for those in the adaptive management space, I'm sure you've come across the cycle, design, and implementation, followed by monitoring and evaluation. You adjust, you assess, and you go back to redesign, and you keep on doing this. The key word I always use in adaptive management is iterative, or iterative, whichever you're comfortable with. The fact that you keep on doing it on and on until all the possible scenarios are in front of you, and you are then able to proceed with it. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if we are in agreement about these two terms, given the topic that we're dealing with, the understanding of uncertainty and the definition of adaptive management, then we can now go in and start from here, and we are starting from way before. Even before we talk about adaptive management, is it normal? I'd like to present it to this engagement, and I'd like to share it with us that actually adaptive management is so full of uncertainties that if you find yourself uncertain about something, just join us, join the party. We are many. We are not alone, and you're definitely not alone. And that's the first thing I talk about here. Is it common to have uncertainties about adaptive management? The answer is a very big yes. I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's someone in this forum, and I'm not sure there's someone out there who uses adaptive management and is so 100% certain about everything in front of them. I'm not sure. Actually, if we were sure, we wouldn't even go into adaptive management. Then project management should be step after step after step, and you follow it all along. So the fact that it is common to have uncertainties in adaptive management, this is a very normal thing. So any one of us who finds yourself uncertain about it, just know that you are with the rest of the bandwagon, if you ask me. It is very common. And some of the reasons why it is so common is because it's a new concept. Well, it's not new as of COVID-19, but adaptive management from, to the best of my knowledge, goes back only up to 1970. My mathematics may not be very right, but that is not even so many years ago. If you compare it, for example, with Pythagoras' theorem, a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, where it is a right angle triangle, for those who did mathematics. That is a theory that has been tested and proven for thousands of years, not even 100. So there's no one arguing with it anymore. If you get a right angle triangle, you have a squared and you get b squared, the opposite and the hypotenuse, the other one is correct. C squared is correct, and you won't argue about it. It is not the same with adaptive management. It is so new, it is so evolving that it keeps changing. New information comes in and new concepts are coming in around it. And because of that, that is one of the reasons why there's so much uncertainty about it, and why it is also common. You may find that something that was known about it 10 years ago, someone else has come up with the new information and it has changed. And that's typical of knowledge and concepts and information that is still evolving. Every time someone comes up with something new, you end up joining it into the school of information that is there. It reminds me, I keep on reading nutrition publications, and one time I'm told that cholesterol is very bad. Then the next time I read another one, I'm told that actually there is some good cholesterol and some bad cholesterol. Then the next time I find another one, and this time I'm told actually cholesterol is good so long as it is managed in which way. That is an evolving concept where people keep on finding new information. And that's also with adaptive management. So if you find that you are in the space of adaptive management and you find that you are very uncertain about so many things, please feel comfortable. We are going to go through this and find out what to do about it. I'm also saying that, can you take it as a learning process as part of the attitude that you need to develop? You will not find someone to run to tell you that, no, this is wrong and this is right, especially if it is in a practical situation where you are implementing a project that is your area specific. If you came to me or to Julia or to someone else, they will not know the situation you are in. So there is no written answer. The correct attitude is that it's a learning process. Are you ready to learn? And if you're ready to learn, then do it. Just go and find information about it until you're sure. So I've mentioned that teachers and scholars are uncertain about it. If you're uncertain about it, you are in good company. It is something that we are going through step by step. Now, as we talk about the uncertainties and some of the reasons why people become uncertain about it, that is the next thing we are covering here. What are some of the reasons why people feel uncertain about adaptive management? And the first one is the fact that it is a new concept. I've given the example of Pythagoras' theorem. I'm not going to labor it again, but if it was proven 1,000 years ago, nobody will argue about it. Because it is new, only since 1970, we are still evolving. And one of the reasons why, one of the causes of uncertainty in adaptive management is it's being new. And I'm putting together it's being new with the sound also. Adaptive management sounds like some remote concept. You don't hear it every day. When monitoring and evaluation came in, it was a novelty. Very few people could talk about it. Now it's very common. A few years ago, when you mentioned M&E, you even in a room with people who have background in programs, they would be struggling or wondering what you're talking about. Adaptive management sounds like that also. When you mention it in a room, people take it as if it is this concept that only those who practice it or who know about it can discuss it. The rest of the people will keep quiet about it. And anytime something happens like that, it creates a lot of uncertainty among the people you're talking to and also among the people that are dealing with it. The second reason that you can put as a cause why there is so much uncertainty about it, there is always the fear of getting the concept wrong. What, now that it's evolving and now that I'm not sure about it, what if I got it wrong and I'm following a wrong path? Anytime you are in doubt, you will notice that you keep on looking behind you to find out, am I on the right path? But then here is my message to those who are in this forum. Keep learning about it. And to me, that is the attitude. And I'm giving attitude as the mitigation here because there's no tangible solution to it. You won't go to someone and they will tell you. If you go reading, you will find a lot of literature about adaptive management. They will not be your situation specific. So my message here, approach it with the correct attitude in terms of read again and again about it. If you're unsure about it, read the notes you have. If you're not very sure of your notes, spread it wide and go outside and find out more information about it. Do I have enough information about it? And am I? Basically, what I'm saying is find a way of building your confidence in what you know. And at the end of the day, if you find someone who knows it and it sounds different from how you know it, then take a very simple and pragmatic position. Well, you know your version, but I also know my version. I believe in my version and I believe you believe in yours, but that's a draw. It's not like I don't know it. I know it this way. You know it that way. That's okay. In which case, you get your confidence from what you know, and you will have addressed the fear of getting the concept wrong. The other one is the fact that there are not many people familiar with the concept of adaptive management, so much so that they can be advisors. We don't have advisors standing by, ready to answer your questions about it. If they are there, they are not very many. Maybe we need to build that pool so that you have a go-to place anytime you get stuck about something on adaptive management. But my point here is that the pool of advisors so far is so small, and that makes it difficult for people. Many people will not know where to go to when they get stuck about it. And my answer to you, the same. Just read widely about it because there's a lot of information. Well, you will read really widely. You won't get information that is sieved and that you can go to straight away and touch. But in the process of reading widely, you will get some of what you need and it builds your confidence. I've used Google a lot. I'm not marketing them, but I believe that all the search engines that are there, you will find a lot of information that is there about it. Read widely and get to know the information that is available. That will build your confidence. The other cause of uncertainty in adaptive management is the fear of the unknown. If you took the adaptive management path in your project implementation, then the first thing you have is, am I sure how my project will end by the end of a given 2 years or by the end of a given 5 years? You've got funding from SMC and you want to find out whether you will give them a good report by the end of this. Whenever people are not certain about something, they will resort to the beaten path. They'll go to the rigid, the linear program management design and approach and leave the adaptive management approach because they're not sure. Some of these things we are going to capture towards the end also. But my point then is that fear of the unknown becomes a cause of uncertainty in adaptive management. We need to deal with it. And one way of dealing with it, why don't we just become adventurers and find out? I mean, get out and find out if it makes sense, because people in the resilient space, I'd like to believe that people participating here and are in the resilient space agree that disasters have become so unpredictable that adaptation is the only other way of addressing them. There is no other way. Nathalie talked about the situation they had in Haiti, and everything kept on changing. Then there is violence, and then there is kidnapping, and you have this. If you took the linear path, you know very well you'll get stuck with that. So if you're in the resilience space, be adventurous and find out, if I follow this path, What can I do about it and what will happen? I'll address some of these at the last point when we talk about mitigation. The other cause of uncertainty is time and cost implications. If it fails, I mean, I'd like to try it, yes, but if it fails, what do I do? If it fails, how do I account for it? Those are some of the causes of uncertainties that we come across in the process. And my message to the people participating here, can you start by making adaptive management a collective decision? The idea to adapt it for a given project, make sure it is a collective responsibility. And that means whatever happens, all of us take it. The problem will come if you are the one who has decided on it and suddenly something goes wrong. But if it is a collective responsibility, then it means all of us are pulling together. It reduces your fear, it reduces your uncertainty, and it makes it a bit more easy to implement. Then the planning stage of adaptive management, like I think Nathalie mentioned, you're supposed to find out all possible scenarios at the planning stage before you even start implementing. And remember that the iterative nature of adaptive management is such that if you take this path, these are the options. It may go this way, it may go that way. This path A, what will happen? You keep on coming up with all possible scenarios, and then you plan for all possible scenarios and budget for them. It gives you a bit more confidence that we have tried at the planning stage to configure every possible situation, and you walk into it a bit more confident. Remember, there is still room for something that you did not plan for coming up. Now, that is part of the adaptation that you need as a methodology. But the message I have here about the fear of time and cost implications, especially if it does not go wrong, spread the responsibility and make sure that you take it up, you take it forward as a team. It has worked for me a few times. It has not worked for me in all cases, but I know from my own experience that it does work when you take that approach. The fear becomes less. It is not zero, but it is much more reduced when you know that if something goes wrong, we are all responsible for it. And including people starts from the donor. Have a discussion with Nathalie at SMC or Julia or whoever it is, just have a discussion with them and make sure that they are aware you are taking the adaptive management approach. And these are all the possible scenarios. These are the budgets for scenario A, this is for scenario B. On a normal day, from my past experience, it's usually a small adjustment. But the moment you convince them that in scenario A, if this happens, we will do this. If this happens, we will do this. Most donors will tell you that try. And remember that it's also the direction that most donors are heading towards. As unpredictability increases, we also increase the use of adaptive management as a methodology. These are some of the ones we can capture within the time that we have. And we move on then to the uncertainty. This should have been the core of this particular presentation. What are they? What are some of the uncertainties in adaptive management? And once we identify them, then at the end, we can talk about how do we manage them. At the beginning of, at the registration, I believe, and a CMA will tell me if that message is in the pot, is in the box. I asked participants to share their own fears, their own uncertainties. What are some of the things that make you so afraid of an adaptive management? I would like to request CMA, if we finish this, maybe between us with Nathalie and Julia, if they have time, but with CMA and K4R, can we compile all these and actually publish them so that this can be something referred to and we are adding into the existing pool of knowledge on adaptive management? It will help somebody. The day someone goes in to find out uncertainties on adaptive management, they should find whatever we have thrown in there so that it can help somebody else who finds that, because when you look for it, most of it, you don't find a lot of information. And that request, I'll spread it right across the whole group. Anything you have on adaptive management, please find a way of publishing it. If you check around and you ask around, you'll find a lot of people can publish it so that it is available online and in any other format. I was told some time back about how a closed book is so useless, that a book only helps you when you open it and you find the information inside. And that information sometimes can change your life. When the book is closed, it serves no purpose. So when we have a lot of reports and a lot of information generated from practical situations like this, and they are kept in the shelves of whichever organization, those reports are not helping. Throw them out there, they will help somebody in the resilient space, and we will have contributed also into that. CMA, you'll consider that and ask us, we can come together and put them together and find out to share them. Now onto the uncertainties that we identify before I get the ones you will share. Some of them are as simple as, am I sure about the concept? If you're not sure about the concept, then you're even unsure about to start, because the concept is the starting point. If you yourself, you're not confident about the concept of adaptive management, how will you convince your team that this is the approach we should adopt or we should take? One of the uncertainties in adaptive management is uncertainty about the concept. When you're not very sure about it, you're not confident about it. If you ask someone about monitoring and evaluation today, they will tell you that monitoring, you track, whether it's the performance, whether it is the results, just track it. Evaluation, you then put it against milestones. What were they supposed to have achieved by this stage? Have they achieved it? Now that's evaluation. Whereas monitoring is just tracking it, whether this has been done, yes. The magnitude or how far, that is not monitoring. In which case, if you are sure about monitoring and evaluation and one of your team members asks you, you are able to reel it out like that. If you're not sure about adaptive management, you will be hesitant. The moment you are hesitant, your team will be too. My second point on there's uncertainties about adaptive management, it always comes back to the line management. Because it's a new concept and you're a project manager or you're a project management, project developer within your organization, if your line management do not know about adaptive management, then you're going to find a problem convincing them. That becomes our second point here. If it reaches a point where for you to use adaptive management, you have to sit down with your line management, tell them what it is, first of all, give them the challenges involved, give them the possibilities of solving these challenges, and then they will grill you with a lot of questions about how about the budget, how about the timelines. If you keep on repeating it, what will you happen? I mean, what will happen at the end, and will we finish it on time? How will we report this to the donor? The moment your line management is not familiar with adaptive management, you're going to have a problem convincing them, and it creates uncertainty about it. You will tell me if you agree with it at the end. The next one then I mentioned is planning, because adaptive management only works very well if it is also planned for very well. The iterative nature of adaptive management is such that at the planning stage, you need to come up with all possible scenarios and have a plan for each, rather a plan for each one of them. It will not go on a half-done planning, because then if a scenario arises while you're implementing and you never thought about it or figured it out, then you have a problem that you're dealing with now, as some of the challenges that we face. Some people have uncertainty about adaptive management because they are not sure how to plan properly for it. It is an unknown factor. Because of that, they don't even know how to plan for it. And that takes us to the fourth one. How do you budget for the unknown, by the way? I mean, in a practical situation, how do you budget for an unknown factor? And that becomes a big uncertainty in adaptive management. Suppose you're under budget, how do you deal with it? And remember that with the current situation that we have, until it changes, most donors will give you funds for a project that you have designed given the budget, given the period, given the outputs, and the timelines for which to do it. Not many of them leave space for budget amendment. Suppose you find out along the way that you under budgeted. What do you do if your donor is one of the ones who does not accept budget amendment? And that creates uncertainty. And who takes responsibility, for example, if the approach you took failed, but the money has been used? How do you go telling your donor that we took the adaptive management approach, we spent this much in year one, and we have not achieved our objective? Who takes responsibility for that budget? So budgeting becomes another uncertainty in adaptive management that I'm sure we are going with for those who are implementing this. What about its application? Suppose you got the concept right as one of the uncertainties. Sometimes the uncertainty becomes applying it. I know what it is, but I'm not sure that I will apply it correctly up to the end. And suddenly that becomes an uncertainty. And the moment it is there, it creates a doubt in you. Are you applying it correctly? And will I achieve the correct results? The moment you can deal with that, then that becomes an uncertainty that you have solved. And I came across in the course of my work in adaptive management, I came across a question that asked whether there are failed projects from using adaptive management. There are failed projects from using all methodologies. If you look for them, you are going to find so many of them. So there are definitely failed projects from using adaptive management. But then now you will have to go deep and find out, why did they fail? Did they plan for it properly? Did they have an implementation team that was familiar with what to do on the methodology? Did they have enough time to figure out all the scenarios, and did they budget for each scenario? When you have dealt with the normal ones, then you talk about the others. Is there something that happened beyond their control that resulted in that methodology failing in that particular project? But at this stage, I'm only mentioning the fact that one of the uncertainties in adaptive management is the possibility of it failing in a given project. That possibility is always there, I can assure you of that. Now you only need to deal with it. If that possibility is there, know that it can happen in your project also. But that does not stop you from implementing it. Prepare well for it, if you ask me. The last one that I'll capture for this particular situation: who takes responsibility at the overall level for the adaptive management approach? And that is why organizations where the adaptive management concept is familiar with the line management from the top, they tend to succeed more. The person at the top is very sure about it, and because of that, they end up taking responsibility for everybody. If that happens, then you're lucky. If it happens that you do not have line management from the top who are certain about it, then maybe the starting point would be awareness about adaptive management from the top. If you ask me, that responsibility becomes better when it is taken right from the top going down. These are some of them. I'd like to receive some of the uncertainties and adaptive management that you come across in the course of your work. I'll really appreciate that as I look at the mitigation measures for the uncertainties that we have mentioned and any other that you may come up with. These ones are applied cross-sectionally. And right from the start, I've talked about more information and more information. The more information you get about adaptive management, the more confident you become about it. How to plan for it, whether it is the concept, whether it is the challenges faced, whether it is how to budget for it. If you look for it, you will get a lot of information. And in my world and in my space, it is in my interest to demystify adaptive management. Anything we can do to make it an everyday thing, I'll be very happy if that happens. Make it an everyday concept, like all the others that you deal with. The moment we reach that stage, we will be miles ahead with regard to adaptive management, particularly in application. And then from my experience, teaching others about adaptive management makes you find out what you know, and particularly what you don't know. Those who have been in the teaching space will tell you that the best time to learn about something is to teach someone about it. Because you will be very familiar about this and this and this, and then you get stuck on that particular point. Then you go and read that particular point where you're stuck. You'll realize that concept, you're okay with it. Challenges, you're very okay with it. Uncertainties, you're very fine. Budgeting, and you get stuck. Yes, how do you budget for unknown? Go and read about it. In the process of teaching someone, you will learn a lot about it. And what about asking questions? I never get tired of asking questions. When I don't know, I'll ask. If you're lucky to meet experts, just ask a lot of questions about it, and it gives you more confidence. You become familiar. And then remember that no matter where you are and which project you're implementing, there is someone who has done something similar in another part of the world. Look for examples that are similar to your situation and find out how they dealt with it. It may not be exact word for word, but you will learn something from how they dealt with it somewhere else and find out how you can adapt it to your situation. There are examples that will help you in that regard. I'm not the marketer for YouTube, but I get a lot of practical things on YouTube because they even demonstrate. You'll get 4, 5, 6 people have posted how to do this. And I get a lot of things about it. You may find that, but I mean, there are so many other platforms where you can learn the things that you are struggling with or how to do them. And people do a lot of this these days. To me, YouTube helps me a lot, but I also visit other platforms. I know that this is not exhaustive. It is not complete. This is sharing of information, but I'm happy that we have a chance to think along the lines of the objectives that I started with, looking at, finding out that it is normal, so that if you find that you are in a situation where you feel you are uncertain about it, know that it is happening. It's very normal. What are some of the causes of the uncertainty? We have covered that. What are some of those uncertainties? We have just covered that. And this last 3.1, just a few of the mitigation measures whenever you are uncertain about adaptive management. And I'd like to end there and open it up for questions. Thank you very much for your patience. I'll take it back to the moderator for this session. Salute.
Thank you very much, Sam. This was really, really insightful. We have really been able to understand what are some of the uncertainties that we always fear as projects, especially when it comes to accounting to our donors, considering funding comes with its own strict regulations and strict guidance that this needs to be done like this. So, and when it comes to adaptive management, unless you get a donor who is flexible and willing to adapt to this new model of adaptive management, then it is very hard to be able to implement a successful project, considering the uncertainties that we always face whenever we are implementing this project. So maybe in summary, whatever I think from my take-home point from this presentation is the practice of adaptive management. For it to be able to flourish, an organization should should provide a platform for an opportunity for its staff to have a continuous learning process. It should be a learning organization that is open to risks and also open to learn from whatever that is happening and adjust and adapt to the situations. And this starts basically with engaging the community and getting to know all the scenarios that might happen whenever you are in your implementation process, so that you can be able to somehow budget for the uncertainties that might happen across the period of implementation. So thank you very much. I can see I don't know if there's any question in the chat box. Maybe just confirm. Innocent is saying, thank you, Sam, very informative. My question, can we say that adaptive management is a knowledge product? And second, link adaptive management to the learning component of monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Thank you. Back to
Let me
you, Sam.
respond. Yes, let me respond to that directly. Innocent, thanks for asking that. And I believe that the question and the response will be shared across the platform so that we can all learn along the way. Now, when you place adaptive management in the knowledge sphere, in the knowledge space, then yes, it's very easy to group it as a knowledge product. And remember that so long as it's evolving, the reason why it's evolving is the new knowledge that keeps on coming from it. But now you also have to split yourself into two with regard to the knowledge component and then the practical component. So long as you are very clear about those two, you're okay. The knowledge component in terms of bringing up anything that we need to know about it to help us understand and implement. But at the end of the day, adaptive management is practical. It is something you apply every day. It is something that you repeat, the iterative nature that I mentioned. You repeat it over and over until you're sure that all possible scenarios are catered for and you implement along the way you thought about it. It is so practical that you cannot confine it to knowledge only. If you group it to the knowledge class, that is okay as a product. And then I'll wonder what are we not going to put there? So back to my answer to your question, yes, you can treat it as a knowledge product, but make sure that you're very clear about the knowledge component of it and the practical component of it, and we are okay. We will still find it happening and find it being applied correctly in situations, particularly in the resilience space, which is where we are at the moment. With regard to management, with regard to adaptive management to the learning component of meal, note the fact that actually the meal monitoring, evaluation, and learning component is so key in the adaptive management wheel. It is so key. That is actually the part that the learning process takes place from. It is the data and information that you capture during the monitoring and evaluation that you use to learn. And remember that it is what you have learned as you go along that you end up doing the assessment so that you then go on and adjust where necessary. In my question and in my answer to your question, the meal component is so crucial to adaptive management process that, yes, very directly linked, and one depends on the other. The learning depends on the meal component. You cannot divorce them. The adaptive management field brings this out very clearly. I hope that addresses what you've asked. If it does not, you will have to ask it again. I will answer it. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Sam. I hope, Innocent, you have been answered. And we have two comments from James. James is grateful that we are glad that KPLC wameturumia. We have been able to learn a lot. And Mary is also thankful and is looking forward to putting thoughts together and being able to publish. I think that is a very good insight that we should, as CMA, SMC, and other partners, we should focus on publishing and just putting a resource hub on matters adaptive management. I think that the next comment, we have a comment from Solomon, and he is appreciating Sam, Julia, and Nathalie for the insightful lessons, and we are grateful. Innocent confirms that thank you, you have answered him, he appreciates. Julia, I think Julia would like to comment on donor flexibility so that we can be able to basically know if our donors are really flexible. So I think, Julia, please.
Yes, and thank you so much, Sam, for this. I definitely agree with you on all of it, and I think it was very the best part, I think, is that you provide us with confidence in being uncertain, and that it is okay to be unsure. To look at that as some kind of source for curiosity. And we can go to Google or YouTube or any other learning platform and just learn more about it. So thank you very much for having that approach. And I think it's the same with donors' flexibility, really. The question, for example, what do we do if we have an adaptive management and we had an approach that failed? We didn't succeed in the decision making or adjustment making of the changes that we saw. And for us at SMC, I mean, if we get a report saying that everything went exactly as planned, then we find ourselves in a worrying situation. We know that no projects do that. So if the report is so transparent, so it shares challenges that the project team has met, and then we will just be grateful for that. Thank you for sharing the challenges, and we are eager to know what you have learned from the failing then. So it's just to be clear on that that's the most interesting things that we see in reports, I would say, how the project team has coped with challenges they meet. But of course, we have rules and guidelines for each grant. And Nathalie said that too, that of course in the context it can be difficult to understand the difference between humanitarian activities and development activities, for example. But the grants are so different. So I tried to mention that in my presentation too, that to see what is possible to do in the adjustments. Some costs the grant cannot finance, and some activities are not possible to fund. But the learning approach and to see what did you learn from the failing, then please share that in reports, all of you. I'm very happy that you emphasize that, Sam. I will think about it a lot more from now on too.
Thank you, Julia. And I think Solomon had just asked a question here. Is it necessary to inform the donor or funding partner that adaptive management will be used before the project is put into action?
May I answer that one, or that is for Julia?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, let me give my suggestion about it. I'd like to believe that in the process of developing a project concept, the methodology is mentioned. Actually, and Julia may confirm this from the donor perspective, part of the reason why your project qualifies is the methodology. If your methodology is not convincing, then sometimes donors find it hesitant. In my space, I'd like to believe that you need to have a very open discussion with your donor about the method you're going to use. And that is where you then become open about the method you're going to use, the challenges that are there, the mitigation measures you've taken, and how you're going to report on all of them. And like Julia's confirmed, they also want to see that you have met challenges. That it is not A takes you, 1 takes you to 2, and 2 takes you to 3, up to 10. at which point was there any problem that arose while implementing this? Short answer, I believe you should do that. Let me hear what Julia says about it from the donor perspective. Thank you.
I just want to confirm what you say. It's exactly how we look at it. If the methodology is convincing, then the whole package is approved if the application is approved. So of course it's good to mention that you are working with an intentional approach to adjust to challenges that you meet. So yeah, of course it's good, but I mean, it can also arise during the way. Maybe you didn't work so much with adaptive management, or you did, but you didn't talk about it in these terms. But then after 2 years, you started to really implement it in the organization and look at it from different perspectives. So maybe you went to this kind of webinar and got new insights about how we should understand uncertainties in the context that we work in. So of course it can happen along the way too, and those kinds of adjustments are also a part of the project cycle, I would say. But definitely confirming everything that Sam said.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Sam. We have Kulu Ishmael, and he is grateful for the presentation and having talked about adaptive management and other terms. So his question is, how much can we learn from the communities in their various ways that they have been living to come to the far they came, considering their subconscious practical lives? I think basically this question is just looking at how much can we learn from the communities, from the far that they have come with, and how best they have been adapting to their lives. And some of these things, maybe they've been adapting subconsciously in the kind of, in the changes that are happening. So how much can we learn from their various ways?
Allow me to go first, will you? Allow me to go first, madam.
No. So maybe we can pose this to our participants also. We just need, maybe you can put on the chat box, how much can we also just be able to learn from the communities we are working with? And probably we could also even share the kind of lessons that we have been able to pick up and have advised the model and the way we are implementing some of our projects. So at this point, I think there are no more comments.
Could I share something on the question by Ishmael?
We would really like to appreciate our speakers for today, our facilitators for today. You have been able to really give us great insights on especially matters adaptive management. Okay, Sam, I think you, okay. Sam, please go ahead.
Confirm that you can hear me first. I think there's some hitch somewhere. Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, Ishmael, I'll direct it to you. I'll channel it to you directly, but I believe it is a shared process. I'd like you to also agree with me that the communities we deal with have had answers to all the things that we are coming up with today, whether it is food or nutrition, whether it is health, whether it is communication, incidentally, whether it is education. The communities we deal with have had them for hundreds of years, not even less than that. The only difference are two. The fact that now, when we talk about adaptive management as a concept, we are trying to make it uniform so that regardless of where you are, we are talking about the same concept. A traditional community, some traditional community in Russia or in Ukraine, and another one in Nigeria or Benin, and another in South America. They have been adapting to their situations every single day with every disaster that comes to them. So the first thing is making it uniform so that regardless of where you are, we are talking about the same concept. When Julia talks about definition of adaptive management, I'm sharing the same definition. We are at par, and we can now communicate almost in the same language, the adaptive management language. The second one is the fact that most of the adaptive management knowledge that is existing was never documented. Well, never may not be the word, but very little of it is documented. If we can document how much adaptation communities have done to circumstances they have been, it is such a rich source of information that we can learn from every day and never get finished. We can learn from it forever. So back to you, Ishmael, they have so much information. The only gap is that we have never documented it. So sharing it and then making it uniform across the board has been difficult. If you ask me, that is how I'd look at it. I'll hear what someone else says about the same thing. Moderator, back to you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. And I think, Ishmael, this has been clearly answered. Yes, we also have another question from Lillian. And I think Julia will take this up. How do you deal with donors who are rigid in program designs?
Yes, thank you, Lillian, for the question. I just wrote in the chat that I think you should challenge them and question their approach then, because it's not according to reality, right? They want the reality to be in accordance with their system, but it should be the other way around. And one way to challenge them is of course to refer to all types of international policies or documents that are talking about flexibility in funding, resilience approach in development cooperation. You can look at research that are internationally acknowledged, so they really understand that this is a necessity for success and for vital organizations to have this adaptive approach. It's not possible to implement a project exactly to plan. So yeah, I stand with you in that challenge.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia. And Mary from IIS is giving us here like a practical example, because she says that IIS Kenya has been using the indigenous knowledge intentionally in resilience in their programming. So the communities have actually survived even before the NGOs came in. So this is really one of the things that we are talking about. It's a good practice that we getting solutions, local solutions for local problems, basically actually works for a lot of communities. I'm seeing Nathalie has her hand up, so Nathalie, please.
Yes, very, very interesting. Definitely the people themselves are taking care of themselves before NGOs or international organization even arrive or existed. So definitely agree on that. The whole SCLR methodology builds on that knowledge that who helps when no one's there. It's only the people themselves. I wanted to comment on what Julia said on the donors. I think also as international organizations, we have a great opportunity to have these conversations with donors what is important and connect. I mean, Local to Global, which is the one creating the SCLR approach that I mentioned, the toolbox, they have signed and been leading in Charter for Change, for example, where it is all about moving the power, the decision making, the design, the implementation from the big international organizations down to the local people themselves, because they know better what works, what doesn't work. They know themselves, they know their neighbors, and so we also need to point out that these documents exist. These global agreements, charters, things where we can sign and together say, this is what we want, this is the change we want to see in the development or humanitarian sector. So we need to point it out on a daily or weekly basis to the donors that we work with. Because as long as we continue to be dependent on the donors and say yes, 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 independent of what they do, we also put our partners in difficult situation where reality is not, it comes secondhand, and bureaucracy or accountability comes firsthand. And a second thing that we have noticed is to let governments or donors actually participate in the trainings and listen into the conversation, use graphic facilitation, use videos, and create materials, whatever you choose, that is available to the donors to see this is the reality of the people. You can't have this rigid system when it's not adapted to the reality we work with, because most governments and who have set aside who have organizations who handle donations, whether it's taxpayer money or people donating money from individuals, they have the aim of changing, of having an impact, and showing them how to have an impact and what things only makes lives more difficult, I think is a process. I mean, we're still in Sweden teaching donors, individual donors, that, you know, getting a personal letter and a photo from every person you donate to, it's not sustainable and it's not empowering, and it's robbing the dignity of the people. If you want to, it's based on human rights, it's based on international agreements that we should have an equal resource management. There is enough money and food and opportunities for people on the globe. We just need to distribute them equally and to make people aware of this. So I think also from a point of international actor, we have a huge responsibility of teaching people who knows best what is best for them. And that is not donors, that is not us as an international organization. It's the people themselves who are found in or hit by disaster and political instability or whatever it might be. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nathalie. And we, at this moment, I think because we are past our time, we wouldn't want to keep we would love to continue with this conversation, but because of time also, we wouldn't want to keep everyone in. I know we had said we will finish by 4:10, it's 4:35. So we, at this point, we really want to thank everyone who has been able to join us, who has been able to participate with us throughout the session. And we also request for those who are not registered as Kenya for Resilience members to be able, or your organizations have not been able to register in the Kenya for Resilience website, kindly join us at www.kenyaforresilience.org. And we are grateful that, and we are looking forward to having another webinar in June. Kindly look out for the webinar. And once you are able to register in the website, you can actually share your contact with Paris Azimale at childrenmissionafrica.org, so that I may be able to add you in the larger Kenya for Resilience WhatsApp group for ease of communication again. Thank you so much. And I would like to call this amazing session to a close, and I would request that Sointa to pray for us.
Okay, thank
We
you
are
so
in
much, Chris, for that. And thank you to all of our speakers and all of you that have joined us today. We are really grateful. And we hope that you have learned something new, that you have made connections also with the people that have been on the call. Now we will just take a group photo. So I'll ask everybody to put on their cameras and have their best smile. I can see already there are a few people who have their cameras on. Yes, we'll just have everybody put on their cameras. Thank you, thank you. All right, we're just waiting for a few more people and then we take the picture. Okay, just 1 second. All right, smile, everybody. Okay, one more. Again, smile. Okay, thank you so much. We'll ask Sointa to pray for us, and then we will come to a close.
Sointa is in a different office and happens to have a problem with the connectivity. But I can volunteer to pray on behalf of CORE. Father, we come before you this great evening, giving thanks and praise for the humble opportunity you have granted us to learn, to gain more knowledge on how to equip and run organization through adaptive management. Father, we all of this for the facilitators and all each and every person who contributed in this particular session that we have had. Oh Lord, bless this group, bless each and every organization present, and we know it will be an honor once again meet in a few moments to come. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Maybe ama ungefaa screenshot ukipaste.
I think I screenshotted them, but Siku saved immediately. So, thank God. Thank God. You and me.